Tonight, the US and Iran trade threats as Donald Trump warns a massive armada is on its way. Iran says its country's armed forces have their fingers on the trigger, ready to target the US and Israel after any attack. That war of words as the scale of the government crackdown becomes clearer, with reports of protesters forcibly discharged from hospital and taken to prison.
According to what I've been told, in some cases patients were removed from ventilators and other medical equipment. They said, let them die, they have no rights.
Coming up, we'll hear from a doctor still working inside the country and ask how Iranians feel about the possibility of US military action. Plus, we'll have details of the leaked proposal for a community run by Israel in southern Gaza, complete with a new electronic currency and a revamped curriculum. And detained by ICE agents, then lost in the system, the Army veteran who says immigration authorities can't find her husband. We'll speak to her live, coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. A massive armada. Our finger is on the trigger. The enemy will suffer. The words being thrown around tonight over a possible military confrontation between the United States and Iran. They are the sort of saber rattling we've become used to. Washington wants a new nuclear deal. Tehran needs to project strength. So yes, one of the biggest aircraft carriers in the world has made its way to the Persian Gulf. This is gunboat diplomacy designed to unsettle and intimidate. But it doesn't mean war is inevitable. Have a listen to the US Secretary of State a few hours ago.
I think it's wise and prudent to have a force posture within the region that could respond and potentially, not necessarily what's going to happen, but if necessary, preemptively prevent the attack against thousands of American servicemen and other facilities in the region and our allies.
Marco Rubio accepts that any regime change in Iran would be far more complex than what was achieved in Venezuela. And while Washington contemplates their next move, we're getting clearer accounts about what happened inside Iran's hospitals and on the streets as authorities crack down on protests across the country. Dr. Yasser Rahmani-Rad, a doctor and a dissident, described to Sky News how security forces forcibly discharge patients even when they needed further treatment. And we heard this from a human rights activist still inside the country.
If the United States and the international world does anything about this, we will be grateful, and we will pray to God that they will be successful.
So what is America's endgame? What would success look like in Iran? We'll discuss that tonight after our first report from international correspondent John Sparks.
In Iran, the architecture of fear has been restored after the theocrats who run this country opened fire on their own people. But their determination to stay in power is matched by their efforts to conceal what took place. Access to the internet is restricted, but Sky News has obtained disturbing testimony from Iran. This is Dr. Yasser Rahmani-Rad, a specialist in internal medicine. He works at a public hospital in Tehran.
In recent days, actions have taken place that have not been seen elsewhere in the world, even in world wars.
He told us what he saw when the regime launched its crackdown.
Pressure was put on nurses and doctors to clear out the emergency department. In other words, any patient who was there, whether they had clear medical indications or not, was told to be discharged. They wanted the emergency ward emptied for security forces who had been injured.
We know the security forces have made incursions into hospitals. Here in western Iran, medical staff tried to prevent them from entering the regional hospital. Patients cower as the authorities search the ward for injured protesters. And Dr. Rahmani-Rad shared more details passed to him by his colleagues.
In some cases, patients were removed from ventilators and other medical equipment. They said, let them die, they have no rights, they are against the Islamic system, and they deserve to die.
و اینا حقشونه ضد نظام اسلامی هستن و حقشونه که باید بگیره.
Not just a doctor, Ramanirad is also an activist, a dissident, who told us he feels compelled to speak out. And he says the security forces are now effectively in control of the hospitals.
If they realize that someone who was injured in the protests has gone to hospital, or even if they had gone before and managed to escape them, they will arrest that person. By checking security cameras, they track them down, raid the locations, and detain them. This is the situation we are in right now.
But the authorities are not just pursuing the protesters. Dr. Ramanirad says 3 doctors in his team of 50 have been arrested. Dermatologist Amene Suleimani, an emergency doctor, Babek Puramin, and surgeon Fahad Nadale. The 3 medics have been detained, we believe, for coming to the assistance of injured protesters. Another doctor, Ali Reza Golsini, has been beaten and detained, say human rights groups. Golsini is reportedly facing execution after he offered treatment to protesters on his Instagram page. Many are simply too frightened to attend clinics and hospitals in Iran, so doctors who live overseas are now providing emergency care to the protesters. I spoke to Dr. Pantea Razian in California. She's received numerous calls.
They already had been shot. They already inside the home. They couldn't go to any hospital because they are afraid of getting killed or arrested. Right? They have the infection right now. Some of them are still bleeding. Some of them has been shot inside the belly. I have one very young boy that has been shot from just 2-meter distance into both knees.
It's a difficult situation. Injured protesters trapped at home without proper care.
So it means they are at the risk of potential death in next few days or week.
This testimony and evidence now emerging from Iran are deeply troubling and produced in many cases by those exercising great courage. But these are not accounts the regime wants the world to hear. John Sparks, Sky News.
Well, the accounts of 2 doctors, we approached the Iranian government for a response but received no reply. Well, my next guest has asked to be called Rosita. Rosita is an activist. She was on the streets of Tehran calling for an end to the Islamic Republic. She's witnessed the anti-riot police shooting at her fellow citizens. And despite the crackdown, she wants to tell the world what happened. Just have a listen.
I couldn't stay silent because that's what they wanted in the first place. They don't want us to be human. They don't want us to have any needs. They just want us as the tools for their aims, their evil aims. We have found out that everything we have witnessed in our small villages or town or districts around us has happened in every inch of the country. Every dead body that we have saw, every horror we have been witnessed is happening everywhere, and it's a massive massacre. It brought us, first of all, grief, and then fear, of course, a little bit, but most of all, it is anger. It is vengeance.
And we are starting to hear about the death toll, and it does seem like the situation, especially around the weekend of January 8 and 9, was horrifying. People have gone back into their homes now. The protests have stopped. Do you think, though, that you will come back out onto the streets?
First of all, you have to know that we didn't leave the streets on our will. We stayed. They killed. They wiped out people on the street. We tried to chant slogans from our windows to say that we are still there. We will still gonna fight with you. Just we're taking a breath and we'll continue again.
I'm curious to know, Rosita, what do you say to critics of the protesters, the regime itself, when they say that you are all, agents of the Israelis or the Americans? The death toll is not real, that yes, several thousand people have been killed, but not the extent that we're seeing. They're describing it as Nazi-style propaganda.
The regime always tells lies. You better know that. We know that. We don't care about the regime anymore. It's been years that we don't care about what they say, because they use propaganda, they say lies. They have the only voice. That is the dictatorship. They have the only voice on the state media and on newspapers, on social medias. That's why we use VPNs all these years, because we don't have legal access to the internet. But they have free access to the internet, and they use X, they use Instagram, they use Telegram. They have a very loud voice of all lies.
Rosita, I wanted to finally ask you about the Armada, the fact that the United States has sent a fleet of warships to the region. They're threatening Iran. They're saying that all military options are on the table. The Iranian regime has pushed back and warned the United States. Do you think, first of all, the United States will come and, to the aid of the protesters or bomb certain parts of the regime's headquarters? And secondly, do you feel let down by the international community?
For Mr. Trump's promises, yes, we pray to all gods that he will do something. Even the fear that he has made was useful, but not enough, not at all, because these savages are unstoppable. So if the United States does something to the whole hearts of this regime, not only the supreme leader, to all of them, because they will spread again. They are just like cancer to the whole world. You have to first kill the tumor, remove it, and then try to chemotherapy. So if the United States and the international world does anything about this, we will be grateful, and we will pray to God that they will be successful, because these guys are really dangerous.
That was a dissident and activist, Rosita. Well, as you've been hearing, Donald Trump is warning his massive naval armada is on its way, and time is running out for Iran to make a deal. Our diplomatic editor, Dominic Waghorn, has more on the president's options for any military strike.
Donald Trump says an armada of warships is on the way to the Persian Gulf. So is he about to attack Iran again? Or is he going to make a deal with the Ayatollahs instead? This is what he said during the recent massive protests in Iran.
I've made the statement very strongly that if they start killing people like they have in the past, we will get involved. And again, I tell the Iranian leaders, you better not start shooting, because we'll start shooting too.
Well, the Iranian government did shoot protesters and is thought to have killed them in their thousands. It's been one of the most brutal crackdowns the world has ever seen. Massacres in at least 19 cities across the country. It's thought mothers, children, shopkeepers, young people, students gunned down simply for demanding change. The unrest has been crushed for now at least, but the US is still moving warships into strategic positions in the Gulf.
We have a big force going toward Iran. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely. We have an armada. We have a massive fleet heading in that direction, and maybe we won't have to use it. We'll see.
Until now, the aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln, had gone dark, turning off its transponders so it couldn't be tracked. Officials now say the warship is in the Persian Gulf and on station in range of Iran. US military officials say 3 guided missile destroyers are escorting the the strike group. The US is thought to have sent more warplanes to bases in the Gulf too. They include the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, the Prince Sultan Base in Saudi Arabia. There's also the Navy Support Activity Facility in Bahrain. More F-15 fighter jets and C-17 transport planes will be sent to the region too. President Trump is reported to have asked for options, so what could the targets be? Well, he could hit the IRGC, or Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It is Iran's most powerful military group, numbering more than 125,000, and has been behind much of the recent repression. It has bases in the capital and across the country. He could strike targets linked to Iran's nuclear and missile programs, like it did in last June's US-led Operation Midnight Hammer, or economic targets, oil and gas facilities essential to the country's already collapsing economy. Or he could strike at the top, targeting the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. That's not thought very likely. If Trump gives the go-ahead, what would be the consequences? Well, Iran's military is sounding defiant, a commander warning the finger is on the trigger. This mural's gone up in Tehran, threatening America with the words, "If you sow the wind, you will reap the whirlwind." It could order its proxies to strike back, like the Houthis in Yemen. They recently released this video warning of more attacks on ships in the Red Sea. More likely would be targeting US allies in the Gulf, which could send the price of oil soaring, which would affect all of us. Israel could also be affected, with Iran potentially launching an offensive towards the nation it calls Little Satan. Airlines are also preparing for possible disruptions, with some airlines cancelling routes there and across some airspace in the Middle East. The biggest blowback to any military action, though, would be rallying Iranians behind their hated government like any other when it's attacked by the enemy. That may be why Trump is also considering doing the opposite, a deal with Iran instead, to remove enriched uranium for good, reduce long-range missiles and ban nuclear enrichment. He's offering a grand bargain of sorts at the end of the barrel of a very big gun. Now, if the Iranian government goes for that, it won't help the people who rose up and want change, because it would leave in place and probably strengthen the regime that has crushed their hopes and killed so many of them.
Dominic Waghorn there. Let's go straight to our James Matthews, who joins us from Washington. And James, we're hearing the regime push back, use strong words, and Donald Trump, as ever, unpredictable. Difficult to know exactly what he might do and what success or the end game looks like for him.
Hi, Yalda. Yeah, I think you're right. It was interesting, I thought, in his Truth Social post today that Trump didn't allude to those who have been protesting in Iran, or the reasons for that. That had been the focus of his military threat just a fortnight ago. Remember that post, "Help is on the way." It would be easy, I think, to read too much into one post on social media, but one question would be, has the premise for action shifted? Trump writes no nuclear weapons. It's all about restricting Iran's nuclear program. I wonder, does that indicate a shift in focus? Because targeting Iran's nuclear ambitions would be a different military operation from one aimed at helping protesters with what they want, which is regime change. Whatever that would look like as a military operation, I think it would look far more complicated. I do think, that everything we've heard today here in the States is setting the table for military action. If you listen to Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State today, he was talking about Iran being weaker than it's ever been, Iran's missile stockpiles, the need, he said, to launch a preemptive strike potentially to protect US service personnel. There's no indication that Iran is planning any kind of first strike. So on the US side, there is this belligerence in the language that does sound like they have something lined up. What it's done, of course, is what Donald Trump wants it to do, and that is to shift attention away from the unease that suddenly is surrounding him. It's been a month of climb downs for him on Greenland, on Minneapolis, his remarks on NATO troops. He needs to stop that drift, change the conversation and present himself as a president in control. That hasn't necessarily been the picture of recent days.
Yeah, indeed. As you say, James, we'll have to wait and see what happens in the coming days and week. Thanks so much. Well, let's bring in Payam Akhavan, an Iranian former UN prosecutor and human rights lawyer. Thank you so much, Mr. Akhavan, for joining us here on the program. I just want to begin by getting your overall assessment of what we've seen played out over the course of the last few weeks since those demonstrations began, since that bloody and brutal crackdown, and where we are today.
Since the earliest days of the Islamic Revolution in 1979, there have been executions, systematic widespread use of torture, and there have been episodes of protest. And most recently, you would be familiar with the Women Life Liberty movement, feminist uprising in 2002, which was met with terrific violence. But the scale of the violence in response to the recent protests is unprecedented. There are indications based on clinical forensic evidence from a network of medical doctors in Iran that at least 33,000 people have been killed in recent days, which is a rate of killing which is 4 times worse than the Srebrenica genocide in the Yugoslav war when I was the UN prosecutor. So the scale of violence, mass killings, the horrific sights of black body bags piling up in morgues, the accounts of refrigerator trucks just dumping bodies in mass graves. The Iranians today are deeply traumatized, a nation in mourning. And meanwhile, the United States and Israel and Iran and China and Russia are playing their geopolitical games in pursuit of their interests. But what the people want is to be able to live in freedom, to live in dignity. And it's a truly difficult and tragic moment for all of us, whether inside Iran or in the diaspora. And we just hope that the perpetrators of these horrific crimes are one day brought to justice.
Yeah, I mean, with the numbers, you know, there are varying numbers. We're still trying to verify many of these numbers. I mean, anything from about 3,000 dead to 6,000 dead. We're hearing more than 17,000 recorded deaths under investigation, possibility of 22,000 dead. So at this stage, given the blackout, the internet shutdown, it's difficult to verify all of these different numbers that continue to come out. But you were recently invited by the UN Human Rights Council to address the mass killings in Iran. What did you choose to highlight?
Well, in terms of the statistics, the Islamic Republic admitted that 5,000 people have been killed. This is about a week ago. And then it revised that number downwards to 3,000. And their pattern of misinformation is such that you always know that if they admit to 3,000 or 5,000, the number is typically significantly higher. But the number that I gave you just now, 33,000, is not something that I made up. There is a network of medical doctors in Iran. They have access to clinical records from hospitals and forensic records from morgues. So they have compiled a list of people who are reported to have been killed. And then you have statisticians who, as scientists, know how to take this raw data and extrapolate. They have arrived at a conservative estimate of 33,000 killed. And even if you simply look at the Kahrizak morgue in Iran, just look at the images, you will see at least several hundred bodies in black bags. And that's just one location in Iran, and the violence has occurred throughout. So you're right, we don't know the exact numbers because of the internet blackout, because of the mass burials where the regime is even removing dead bodies, so there's no record of them. But by any measure, this is the largest mass killing that has occurred in contemporary Iranian history. And I'm afraid that
if we look at 2009, you know, the numbers still horrific, but a couple of hundred protesters killed. Same in 2019, same in 2022. The numbers, regardless of whether it's 3,000, 5,000, or as you say, the network saying that it might be more than 30,000. I mean, it's horrifying, regardless of what those numbers are, because they are in the thousands. But what are you asking the international community to do now?
Well, at the very least, the international community must condemn this mass murder. It must investigate and gather the evidence, which is why the UN Human Rights Council renewed the mandate of the International Fact-Finding Mission last week in Geneva. But above all, the perpetrators must be told in no uncertain terms that they will one day be brought to justice. The UN Security Council should refer this matter to the International Criminal Court. And although we know that it will not be possible to arrest the leaders of Iran today, we persist in the hope that the day will come when we will prosecute them in the independent and impartial courts of a democratic Iran. Because the Iranian people cannot forget the scale of the crimes that have been committed, and it's impossible to build a better future if these horrific crimes are left unaddressed.
Dr. Payam Akhavan, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you.
You're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come on the programme, Keir Starmer goes to China. We'll look at the political tightrope the Prime Minister's walking in Beijing.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
He's the first British Prime Minister to visit China in 8 years. And Keir Starmer is on a mission to build a more consistent relationship with President Xi and Beijing. But from national security concerns to Beijing's human rights record, He'll be walking a diplomatic tightrope during his 3-day visit. That's because, in his own words, like it or not, China matters for the UK. Soon after landing, he addressed British business leaders, outlining his goals for the trip. Just have a listen.
For me, the most important thing, as ever, is to be absolutely determined that this will deliver back into the United Kingdom. Of course, we will have to manage our differences, but that's what you do with a mature, consistent, comprehensive and strategic approach to China.
Our political editor, Beth Rigby, is travelling with the Prime Minister and has this assessment of the challenge ahead.
Well, when Keir Starmer landed here in Beijing and addressed the delegation of business and cultural leaders that had joined him, he said, "You are making history." And he does see this, the UK sees this as a historic visit. He's the first UK Premier to have come to Beijing in 8 years. During that period, relations have been somewhat frosty between London and Beijing. This is an attempt at a reset from a Prime Minister who is operating in an increasingly fractured world where you've got two big superpowers, China and the US, and the US, a long-standing UK ally, becoming a more unreliable partner. And actually, Keir Starmer coming here is reflecting what other European leaders and other allies are doing as well. Germany, France, Canada, all of those leaders trying to build ties with China. You simply cannot ignore its economic might. But how does Starmer navigate it? There is, of course, the question of Donald Trump. The US did not much like the UK's decision to allow China to build a mega embassy in the UK, and he did not much like it when Carney of Canada came here and started doing trade deals and arrangements with China, Trump responding by threatening tariffs. So that's a delicate diplomatic dance the Prime Minister is going to have to navigate. There are also issues of human rights that the Prime Minister will have to navigate. But on this matter of the big superpowers and where does Europe and middle powers, if you like, look, Mark Carney clearly at Davos said that the middle powers, be that Canada, France, Germany, the UK, need to club together and push back when it comes to these superpowers. When we asked the Prime Minister about this, he said, "I'm a pragmatist and this is British pragmatism." And he really does not want to pick a side. He's hoping he can do business here and not annoy other allies, but it is a tricky, tricky diplomatic dance.
Beth Rigby reporting there. Well, as Beth mentioned, the Prime Minister is there despite national security concerns and criticism of Beijing's human rights record. That record is no better highlighted than in the case of Jimmy Lai. The jailed former media tycoon is one of Hong Kong's most significant pro-democracy voices. He's been behind bars since 2020 and is facing life in prison. Well, Jimmy's son, Sebastian, joins me now. Sebastian, really good to see you. We've spoken about your father several times on this programme. I've interviewed him many times over the years. Do you have an expectation this evening, tonight, tomorrow, over the course of the next few days, whilst the Prime Minister is in Beijing, that the case of your father will be raised?
It is my understanding that he said that it will be raised. He said that publicly. He said that my father's release is a priority. Look, I think this is a real litmus test. This is a test to see if this idea of being closer to China is truly something that is fruitful. I mean, if they can't even put a 78-year-old man on a plane and send him back to London after having essentially tortured him for 5 years, you know, he's been in Hong Kong and in maximum security prison for the last 5 years in solitary confinement, then what can we expect from that relationship, especially after we talk about a warming relationship. He's flying over, first Prime Minister in 8 years. We've given them, as you mentioned before, the mega embassy. If they can't even do something so simple and so humane, then what is this relationship going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, the point is that also this relationship has sort of gone on a roller coaster ride. There's been red carpets rolled out, then the relationship has been quite frosty. Now the re-establishment of this relationship, and I guess along the way things get compromised, including human rights, records and holding a nation like China accountable?
Yeah, I think that is kind of how we judge how China views us as a nation. Look, if we talk about a relationship, it's an equal relationship, right? We're both sovereign nations. We're not subservient to China. And again, if they're not even willing to respect the rights of our citizens, our individuals, the rights of our nation, then that's all you need to know about this country. All you need to know about this relationship.
Sebastian, tell me about your father's condition, because when we last spoke, you talked about his health deteriorating. You've just mentioned there he's 78 years old. How is he doing?
Unfortunately, it's only gotten worse. 14 days of solitary confinement is considered prolonged solitary confinement in the form of torture. He's been there for 1,800 days. Over the last year alone, he's lost 10 kilos. If you put a 78-year-old man in the conditions he's being put in, it's no wonder that he has all these health issues. He's now getting heart problems. His nails are falling off. His teeth are rotting. It's incredibly heartbreaking, and it just outlines how urgent this is.
How much contact are you having with your father and keeping across how he's doing?
So all I hear is the information that I get in public, because his trial started in 2023. It was in open court. He still hasn't been sentenced. It's been 2-3 years. But there's people who tell me that they see him, and though physically he's a lot weaker, much more frail, that he's still going strong mentally and spiritually. Look, this is a man who knows that he did the right thing in the end of the day, and he knows that you can't control what other people do to you, but you can control what you do, and we're very proud of him. But it is, yeah. I mean, I honestly don't know how much longer he has.
Yeah, and I guess when we highlight to our viewers what Jimmy Lai's crime was, essentially, he was accused of going against the new national security laws. He's a media tycoon. He's had a publication for many years, and it was seen to be speaking out against the Chinese government, which again shows the differences in terms of values and building that relationship with China, as far as the UK is concerned.
Yeah, exactly. The charge that he's been found guilty of is collusion with foreign forces. But collusion suggests a nefarious benefit. And in 5 years, in going through all the evidence, in allegations of torturing people to get statements against my father in the trial, I mean, all they found is that this nefarious benefit is democracy. It's one vote for every single person in Hong Kong, and the knowledge that because of my father's work, because of what he's done, Hong Kong is a freer and a better place. I mean, here's a man who's given everything that he has, a campaign for 30 years to further these freedoms, to defend these freedoms, and stayed and defend his colleagues. He's a hero in most people's eyes. What he's done isn't not just a crime. It's in this country, it's seen as incredibly virtuous.
And Sebastian, what is your expectation from the UK government, that they will raise it and hopefully it will put, the Chinese on notice that if they're to rebuild this relationship, these are some of the issues that the British government wants resolved?
Yeah, I think it's a very easy thing for Hong Kong and China to do. Administratively, it'll take them 2 hours to put him on a plane, send him over to the UK. Not only is it morally the right thing to do, it's the humane thing to do. And more importantly, it's directly beneficial for Hong Kong and China's both their reputation, but also the rule of law in Hong Kong. I mean, they've essentially weaponized it to attack my father. So by freeing my father, they show a sort of return to normalcy. Though it's never going to return to what it was before, it's at least a place that makes rational decisions.
Sebastian, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's go to the Middle East now, and Israeli leaders say the nation can slowly begin to heal after the funeral of Ran Gavili, the final hostage to be recovered. Rangivili's remains were found in a cemetery in northern Gaza on Monday. The discovery unlocks the next phase of Donald Trump's peace plan, which includes the reconstruction of Gaza. One idea that's been leaked is for a planned community in Rafah, which would force Palestinians into what would effectively be an Israeli-controlled surveillance city. The U.S. military-led stabilization group has put forward plans for the housing bloc, which would be under full Israeli military control. Residents would have to be invited to live there and then monitored through biometric surveillance. That digital ID would be needed to move around. Residents would be provided with electronic wallets and would not use cash. And a revamped curriculum would be used in classrooms promoting normalization with Israel. Well, investigative journalist Sharif Abdul Qudus got hold of those documents for Dropsite News and joins me now. Thank you very much, Sharif, for joining us here on the programme. First of all, you know, when we look at the details of this, it's incredibly disturbing. But just if you could give me the backstory of how these were, you know, obtained, and then, of course, Dropsite then got them, and this information is now out. But how much do we know about whether this will actually become a reality?
Well, at the official launch of the Board of Peace, which is the body that will rule over Gaza at Davos last week, Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, delivered a presentation about the so-called master plan for the redevelopment and so-called reconstruction of Gaza, what he called the new Gaza. It included economic zones, industrial parks, residential zones, and we actually have a glimpse of what is being planned for these residential zones and what this community in particular seems to be a pilot program for the rest of Gaza. So on January 14th, the Civil Military Coordination Center, or CMCC, held a presentation about what it called Gaza First Planned Community. Now, the CMCC was established by U.S. Central Command, which is CENTCOM, a week after the ceasefire went into effect in October. It's headquartered in this large warehouse-style building in southern Israel, and it involves dozens of countries and organizations. It's led by U.S. Army Lieutenant General, and it's supposed to monitor the implementation of the ceasefire. So this Lieutenant General, who heads up the CMCC, held this presentation last week about this housing compound that's supposed to house up to 25,000 Palestinians in an area of Gaza that's still under full Israeli military control. And as you pointed out, the presentation includes kind of every aspect of life of how this housing compound will be run: the municipality, economy, health, education, law and order. So, you know, there's a set of criteria, for example, for which Palestinians will be, quote, invited to live there. They'll have to undergo security checks to prevent the entry of what they called Hamas elements. There's no indication of how they're going to establish who is part of a Hamas element or not. That's left vague. To enter this zone, Palestinians will have to pass through a security checkpoint. Everyone entering will be registered with biometric documentation to not only enable them to get in, but to access services. And when we talk about services, these are basic services, getting food and housing. That registry will be based on Palestinian ID numbers issued by the authorities in coordination with the Israeli military. So the Israeli military already had a lot of surveillance and monitoring of Palestinians in Gaza, but this would give them another layer of monitoring through this biometric data. It also brings Gaza's historical cash-based economy under further surveillance and control through these so-called electronic shekel wallets. And then finally, perhaps the most Orwellian part of this is that under the education sector, it proposes a curriculum that says it won't be Hamas-based, but will follow what they called culture of peace principles modeled after the United Arab Emirates. What people have to remember is that the United Arab Emirates and Israel signed a normalization agreement in 2020 under what's called the Abraham Accords. And since then, the United Arab Emirates has normalized relations with Israel more than any other Arab country. They have very robust trade.
I just want to break some of this down, Sharif, because what I'm hearing here is the weaponization of aid and food based on what you're saying that this is. And also, it appears, you know, to me like this is some kind of experiment or lab where you're chosen to go in and you're fully monitored, you have IDs, there's surveillance about whether you can be a good citizen or not in a sort of lab environment.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's exactly what it is. You know, we spoke with a former senior UN official who worked in Gaza for between 2022 to 25, and he basically said that this is a lab for surveillance that will be a model for future residential zones. And it basically is, he called it a reincarnation of a refugee camp where Israel and outside forces will have complete economic, social, and security control over a new generation of dispossessed Palestinians. And this is the future that is being offered by this foreign body, the so-called Board of Peace, and that is US-led, which has President Trump as its chairman for life, with these kind of emperor-like powers.
Do we know, though, Sharif, whether this is an actual reality, or is this one of the ideas that's being floated at the moment?
We know that this zone is being built. Satellite imagery analyzed by the group Forensic Architecture shows that there is Israel has been doing an incredible amount of construction of military bases and roads in the 50% of Gaza that it controls, alongside a lot of destruction of Palestinian property. But there's 1 square kilometer between 2 military corridors in southern Gaza, in Rafah, where they're engaged in something that's not seen anywhere else in Gaza. They are raising the land, they're compacting the ground, and they're clearing away the rubble. And we know that this is the location of the site where they're going to build this first, what they called Gaza's first planned community. And reporting by The Guardian later showed that the United Arab Emirates is actually going to be funding the construction of this project.
Sharif, extraordinary reporting there. We will be following this closely and hope to have you back on the programme. That's Sharif Abdul Qudus, investigative journalist there. This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Next up on the programme, another day of tension in Minneapolis. We speak to a woman who's leaving America as a result of ICE raids.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you. How are you feeling?
Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Conor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences. How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute.
We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Conor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
It was probably the darkest time in my life.
Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death.
Scotland has a shameful record. Worse than England, the worst in Europe.
Why not just say you failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder.
Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma.
Free wherever you get your news.
It's over, isn't it?
The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster.
This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country.
A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Ennis after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me.
I'm so grateful.
Sky News, the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Rich and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now? In Minneapolis, the man who confronted a Democratic representative, Ilhan Omar, and tried to spray her with a substance has been arrested on another dramatic day in the city. Ilhan Omar had been speaking out against federal immigration enforcement activities, when the man approached her. He was tackled to the ground and led from the room. Clearly, tensions are still high after the fatal shootings of Renee Good and Alex Pretty, and despite Donald Trump indicating he wants to de-escalate in the city. Well, let's speak with Hannah Silveria, an Army vet and lawyer who's leaving Minnesota and America after ICE agents detained her husband during his green card interview late last year. Thank you so much, Hannah, for joining us here on the programme. First of all, just tell me what's actually happened to your husband, because you guys are married, but you went to sort out his green card, and now, he's been detained, essentially.
Yes, so we had originally gone to do a typical adjustment of status on the basis of our marriage. And when we went to the interview to close out that process, I guess you could say, and legitimize our marriage for the government, he was arrested in the USCIS building where we were doing things, quote unquote, the right way. And they barged in, arrested him, and took him into detention where he has been ever since.
I mean, it just sounds like utter chaos. They didn't quite comprehend or understand why you were there, and then this sort of response and reaction.
Yes, it took me and our lawyer completely by surprise. I think my husband was anxious that this would have been the outcome, just given the policies and how they've been carried out as of late. But it was something that was an utter shock to our system.
So how long have you guys been apart? How are you going to get him out of detention, essentially?
He has been in detainment now since November 24th. And as far as getting him out of detention, we have gotten no real updates on anything. Even the Brazilian consulate is unable to get answers. He has been moved from San Diego and is now in a detention center in Louisiana against a judge's orders. And our lawyer has been trying to facilitate with a deportation officer how to arrange his travel home. And all of her efforts to communicate have been ignored. Her emails, her phone calls. She actually went to the facility, and that's how we ended up finding out that he was relocated to another state without anyone telling us.
So you know where he is. When you say that you're going to leave the United States, that's your plan once you basically get him out of detention?
Correct.
So, from about November 24, when you were in that room, have you essentially not had a conversation with him?
We have been able to see each other a few times. I've gone into the facility, actually. Luckily, since I'm an attorney, I've been able to go on attorney's visits to prepare him for his hearings and things like that when we were still in pursuit of a green card. So we have been able to see each other a few times, and I have been able to speak with him on the phone most days for a short period. It is very expensive to talk to people in detention, but we have made sure to keep up some kind of contact, mostly because people are getting lost in the system, and so that I can keep track of his whereabouts to facilitate his eventual travel back home.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, Hannah, this is your story. It's one story, but there are many other stories like this emerging of very similar cases.
Yes, many.
So is there a community that's been formed? I mean, are people trying to, discuss this openly and with each other to try and get some answers and get their loved ones out of detention?
Yes, I have Right after this took place, you know, I formed a group chat with a few of the wives to try to exchange information because it's very difficult to obtain information on this entire process in general, which is an issue. And we have taken it as a couple on the mission to be able to help people set up groups where we can exchange information and like knowledge about how to track down our loved ones. This has become a way bigger issue, and more people are passionate than truly people believe. We have started a huge coalition online just of all the people that are so passionate, of the people getting lost in the system. This is a serious issue. We are not the only ones. We have just been the most outward about the issue and comfortable speaking on it, but it needs to be talked about. It is way bigger of an issue than we actually believe.
I have about 30 seconds, Hannah, but what are you hoping now will happen?
I am hoping that, you know, eventually with the amount of people speaking out and how much information we are getting out, that we can all band together and unite as a nation to put an end to this madness. You know, there are more of us than there are the people who are trying to implement these policies, and we need to talk seriously, get together, get on the same page for how to put an end to this, at least make these facilities better, more humane.
Okay. Hannah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave it there, but we're grateful that you've joined us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. The Wrap with Anna Botting is up next. Good night.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.